I know. All right, so we're going to talk today about 5 steps to boost workplace productivity. This is actually part 2. This is part 2. And so I'm going to ask anyone, if you did not participate in the first one, please do check it out. I did include it in the email that I sent out. I can link it up again in the comments here if I can find it real quick without throwing everything off, but I'm going to try to do that. And if you are, again, if you're new, please write that you are new. If you are returnee, please write the word return or returnee. All of them are great to see and certainly appreciate all of you for being here. All right, so is it Samili? Did I pronounce that correctly? Patricia, welcome. Looks like you might be new. So definitely excited about all of you being here. And please indulge me as I quickly try to find the link from the first. For some reason, it's not populating in my, oh, there we go. Okay, I should be able to grab that in just a moment. And I would also encourage you, I'm going to share the link momentarily with the link for all upcoming webinars. I only have one, I've got one more tomorrow. That one is on memory and retention. So anybody here who is an educator, I think you definitely want to be checking that one out. There's a lot of goodies going on with regards to how do we ensure that our students remember information better. Something is happening here because I just grabbed the link and yet it's not pasting properly. Hang on one more second, everybody. I guess today is just one of those days. This is so strange. I pasted it twice. It looks like it froze, but nothing happened. I'm going to try one more time. I really do appreciate you bearing with me as I navigate through this mess called technology. Let me grab it from the top here and see if this pastes. There we go. All right, so anybody who wants to go ahead and take a look at that recording, please go ahead and do so at your convenience. Any link that I share with you, I would encourage you to click on it now because it will disappear, and then go ahead and open it later, or at least look at it later. But now, of course, our focus, we want to keep it on our conversation. Would anybody be willing, if you were at the last one, anyone want to tell me what was a major takeaway for you? If you have a question or something you'd like to learn today, you can include that in the chat as well. And I'm noticing a lot of you are replying, all panelists only. So when you see the chat at the bottom, you'll see the word TO2 with a colon and then a drop-down option right next to it. So there, choose all panelists and attendees, and this will allow everybody to see a response, not just me. Okay, so again, if you have anything you'd like to focus on, anything you learned the last time you want to share, just make clear what you're telling me. Are you telling me what you learned or telling me what you would like to learn? In fact, K could be the letter we use for what I know, meaning what I learned the previous, or better yet, L. L would be what I learned, and W would be what I want to learn. So maybe just do an L dash, what you learned, W dash, what you want to learn. Okay, and I'll try my best to go ahead and focus on your comments as I incorporate, as I, kind of like work through my prepared, my prepared stuff. All right, so I hope that that's a fair way of doing it. And if you could also share with me your industry. So if you're in education, you could write teacher or principal. That would be T or P. That's a good way to do it. If you are in business, if you own a business, you could write a B for business, or you could write, yeah, let's just do B for business. That'll be everyone in the for-profit space. So I get a sense of who's on the call and how to direct my comments. Okay, so let's continue for now. Welcome, everybody. And by the way, for those of you who don't know who I am or what I do, I am an executive coach and I'm a former educator. So I kind of hit on a couple of different levels here. And I've been delivering these webinars now for, I'd like to say we're coming up on 2 months. It's been a while, and I really thank those of you whose names I recognize by now. I feel like we're almost friends, kind of getting to know each other a little bit better, even though you're hearing me and not vice versa. But I thank you all, the returnees, for coming back time and again, for taking from your time to be able to learn with me, to build this community, and of course, to share your feedback. So I love to do these kinds of things wherever I can. And for people who are looking for help in anything related to leadership, team management, communication, of course, delegation, these are all things I can support you with, and we could talk about that a little bit later. So that's just a little bit of my bio. All right, a couple of quick reminders or announcements. Number one, we talked about before, so please set your chat to all panelists and attendees. And Aldrina, thank you for doing that. Therese, I see you did it. Denise, you as well, and many others. Thank you for everybody for doing that. And anyone who wants to access a certificate for completing this webinar together, I'm going to link that up in just a second here. Here we go. It's at the bottom of the link that I'm about to put into your chat. All right, so go ahead and grab that, and then you could access it a little bit later. There are other goodies on that page as well. So try to be like a kid in a candy store. Grab as many things as you want. Whatever serves you there, it would be my pleasure for you to have. Okay, so do go ahead and do that. Now, I want you to know, for those of you who have been with me for a little bit, I am making real progress in getting these masterminds up and running. I still would love your feedback. So if you can just give me 5 minutes, in fact, I would love to just stop right here and say, okay, everybody go complete this, but I just don't want to do that to you. At the same time, it would mean the world to me to have your feedback in this process. So I'm going to link up again the different options depending on what best suits you or is most consistent with your line of work. I shared one for business leaders, one for school leaders, and one for teachers. So please find the form that is most relevant to you. I ask you to please share with me your wisdom. There's no commitment to buying anything, no requirement here for participating. It would just give me feedback, minimally. And of course, if you are interested in exploring that further, you have the option of sharing that in the form. So please think about this. In fact, later I'm going to ask you directly, if this interests you, just so that you know what a mastermind is very quickly, if I may. It's bringing together people of a common background. So business leaders, school leaders, you can imagine the connection right off the bat, that are going to be convening on a regular basis, weekly for an hour, getting opportunity to engage in breakthrough exercises, things that will advance your professional career, whatever that means for you, an opportunity to do real learning, things like we're doing now, whether it's productivity, delegation, communication, feedback, a lot of the stuff we call soft skills, as well in many cases as technical skills. So how do you conduct an effective meeting? How do you provide meaningful feedback to people who need it? How do you onboard and train and hire the right people? All these kinds of things that are important no matter what industry you're in. And then we have the hot seat. Okay, now the hot seat is where individuals on a rotational basis have the opportunity to ask a question or to present a problem that is top of mind for them, that they want to tap into the collective wisdom and get answers. And then there's accountability around the solution. So whatever they decide they're going to do as the action item from that hot seat experience, that's the job of the facilitator, which is me, to ensure that a meaningful goal emerges and real accountability occurs. And of course, the group would hold each other accountable as well. So if you are ready to scale up, if you are ready, whether it's if you're in business, to grow your business, to see the opportunity on the other side of uncertainty, right? We're in an uncertain time, but we're also at a uniquely positioned time. Many of us have more time on our hands. Many of us have been looking to grow and haven't really figured out what that could look like. Many of us want to understand best practices that others are involved in, and we certainly would benefit from community, especially being in isolated context right now. So just out of curiosity, again, no commitment here whatsoever, with 10 being super interested in this and 1 being not at all interested in this, would you mind just putting a number in the chat on that range of how much this interests you and would even like to explore talking about this maybe on a personal level beyond, this conversation, maybe one-to-one or something similar. No commitment, but I just want to get a feel for, does this offer even resonate with you? Okay, 5, 6. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Kelly. Anybody else? Continue to respond, please, as I pivot our slide here. Okay, Marilyn, thank you for your response. And I do appreciate your honesty wherever you are in this. No need to say yes just because I'm asking. But if I don't ask, you'll never be able to say yes. Okay, would love to hear from others as well. I think we have about 1/8, not even, of our group represented in the response just now. So if you are from the non-responders, I would love to hear from you as well. Okay, why you want to stick around to the very end. Oh, thank you, Therese. I got to go through your response here as well. From last time, more specific, how to say use SMART goals. Great, great, great. Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. We'll have some more nuggets today. So I already talked about the mastermind a little bit. We'll skip through that for now. I'm going to link up my productivity assessment and blueprint. And I do want to talk about upcoming webinars, one tomorrow on retention and one next week with another co-presenter that is going to really be valuable as well to ensure that any remote meetings you are having are actually hitting their mark and are delivering, and you know what people's takeaways are. Okay, so anybody who is responding 5, 6 or above and wants to talk further, I'm just going to go ahead and include my email real quick in this. Sorry for doing this now, but if I don't do it now, I'm not sure when I'll do it, and I'm just including it here. Please do reach out to me. Let me know that you're interested, and of course, we could talk further. So the 5 steps are going to look familiar because they're the same 5 steps as I mentioned the last time. The difference between this presentation and the previous one, frankly, is just in the selection or the choice of subcategories. So for example, within each of these, as I mentioned before, there are 5 action items within plan it, share it, do it, sustain it, and lead it, which I'll briefly summarize in a moment. So in those are 5 different areas. We focus on 5 of the 25 the last time. We're going to focus on a bunch more today. So with these 5 steps, first you have to plan what your process is going to be. Otherwise, as we said, any road will get you there. And that's not necessarily what we want here. So getting really clear on the task, the process, the outcome. What do I want to accomplish? Not all productivity is the same. We want to not confuse productivity with busyness. By the way, just like I asked at the beginning of this presentation, I will ask you on the back end for your primary takeaways. So I'm hoping you're taking notes so that when I ask you at the end, what is a productivity idea that you could lean into, as I'm kind of leaning into the camera right now, that you could lean into and make a real commitment around for yourself that's going to drive your productivity moving forward. Please take some notes on this because I think at the end of the day, that's what is going to make you more productive, which is the goal here. Number 2, where others are involved, make sure to share it and share it in a way that works for them with consistency, with a framework, a structure by which to share that information, and of course, to give over responsibility in the form of delegation where appropriate. Number 3 is to do it, actually getting the work done, the most important of them all. That's the thing around which everything else revolves. Number 4 is to sustain it, to make sure that you're not just doing it once, kind of like when you exercise, you get excited about it, you go on a diet, you get excited about it, you do it for a day or 2 or 3, and then life happens, kind of like a New Year's resolution. Right? That's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for going into it with a plan from the beginning to be able to sustain it. And then finally, for those of you who are leaders, and of course you are a leader of self, even if you don't consider yourself a leader of others, and even if you're something like a teacher, or maybe you report to others, you still have opportunity to lead those in your charge. And if you don't have anyone in your charge, you can still lead up. Lead across, lead up. So there are different ways by which to connect with and demonstrate your leadership and understanding what leadership is all about and how one can lead others towards a successful outcome. All of that will make you more productive. Okay, so let's talk about these. And I did the same thing the previous time. The one that you notice that is in a different color, which is a turquoise blue, that's going to be the one that I have, let's say, prepared remarks to share with you today specifically. If there's anything here that you want to ask about, please feel free. For those of you who are curious, the last one we focused on setting positive, actionable SMART goals. So we talked about what SMART was and the different components, and that was referenced earlier in the chat. Now I'm going to focus on managing and prioritizing your to-do list. I'm just on my second cup of coffee here, ladies and gentlemen, so apologies for any errors. But you'll notice the other ones as well, right? What are the right tasks, the things that are most important that I should be working on, how to organize your workspace, and determine what pieces are needed. All of that is part of this, but let's talk about managing and prioritizing your to-do list. Now, to be very clear, last time I think I mentioned this, I'm not a huge fan of to-do lists, even though I have them. By that I mean, and we'll talk about this later, the real wisdom here, I believe, is taking things that are most important to you. Once you identify what those are, identify the amount of time approximately that it'll take for you to complete it, and finding the right time of day, depending on how much energy, mental focus, other things are required, and then blocking it out on your calendar. So if, for example, you need to write a report, or you need to make 10 sales calls, or you need to be studying something, or whatever that might look like, you should determine, when will my mind be best suited to do this? What other things do I have to do? Can I do this maybe when I'm a little bit lower energy? Must it be when I'm higher energy, higher focus? And then put it on your calendar, blocking all other matters out. That's the goal, the ideal here in this conversation. Minimally, if you're going to be working with a to-do list, or since you probably will have that as well, let's at least talk about how to manage it and to prioritize. So here are some questions, either questions or considerations. It probably should be, not so much questions, but let's keep them as considerations. And I'm just curious, going from, let's assume that the top left, which is the check one, with the red circle, actually the two red circles, starting top left and working around the screen clockwise. So the bullet list is number 2, the calendar is number 3, and then the pyramid or triangle with the X inside is number 4. From your perspective, which of these is the most important to consider or to be practicing on a regular basis? I'll give you a chance to read it and then to please respond. In fact, what I'm going to ask you to do is rank all 4 and do them from left to right, from most important to least important, from your perspective. So it could be 4, 2, 1, 3, anything like this. Okay, Hassan, thank you for getting us started. Feel free to elaborate about why you chose number 3. Okay, so it looks like Therese has number 4 as the highest priority, Danielle number 2, Aldrina number 1. So we're 4 for 4 in terms of hitting on each of them at least once. And we did it as fast as we possibly could. So thank you all for your responses. Hassan, if you could reply to all panelists and attendees, that would be great. Thank you, Nancy. Okay, appreciate the feedback there, getting it on the calendar so that it's a visual. Thank you, Kelly. So I'm not going to tell you my opinion because I don't think it really matters. A lot of 4s just came through. Thank you all for responding. Appreciate it. Monica, please respond to all panelists and attendees and resubmit. Okay, so let's start with number 1, just working around the 4, going clockwise. You want to ask yourself which items, if completed, will have the biggest positive impact on you and your work or company or organization, and these should be prioritized. Does anyone know what this is called? One name for it is the 80-20 rule or 20-80 rule, depends on which side of it you are starting. But does anyone happen to know the full name? Based on research, I believe the individual, the gentleman, was Italian, and it dates back to the 19th century. The idea that 20% of our activities typically will produce 80% of the results. This may be a little bit different if you're an educator, but certainly would be relevant to anyone running a business or trying to provide a service. So while I wait to see if you have the answer to that, let me move on to the second one. If you do keep a list, keep it short and manageable. And if I may, I'm going to jump actually. Hassan, you are correct. It's the Pareto principle. Excellent. The Pareto principle. So number 2 is keep your list short and manageable. And then number 4 is remove anything that just sits on your list and just sits and sits and sits and you never do it. So even though one day it might have sounded like a good idea and something that you really should attend to, if you never get there, take it off of your list. Keep your list short and manageable. And then back to number 3, like we talked about before, put the important items on the calendar and loop in anyone who needs to be there. And I would add, if you can, create a little bit of added accountability by telling other people of your plans so that minimally you know that they know, and ideally you even want them to be asking you about it so that you are forced to answer to them and get things done. I had somebody who asked me if I would write an article for his publication, which this month at least is electronic and virtual. Usually it's in print. I told him yes. Originally he told me 10 days. Then he asked me if I could have it for Friday, which was definitely within 10 days. And I didn't commit, but I basically said to myself, well, now that he's upping the ante, that's going to force me to try to get this done sooner. Sometimes that accountability could be all the difference in getting things done or getting things done in a timely fashion. Any other thoughts here? Any other questions on this slide? Because I think there's a lot of value in this topic, and I would love for you to be able to think about it. Maybe share how you're going to use this. Something that maybe for the longest time you've had in your head or have done it when you have had time that really deserves more dedicated attention and dedicated time block to achieve, and or strategies and how you're going to approach your to-do list differently. Any thoughts on that? As a reminder, please reply to all panelists and attendees. Monica, Marilyn, if you could adjust your settings if you haven't already. And I'm just seeing a few other people here as well. Some of you I mentioned before. Blessing, if you could do that. Hassan, you might have changed yours already at this point. I think you did. Excellent. Thank you. So everybody, please do have that setting in place. Anything else here about this slide before we move on that you would like to unpack or emphasize or provide an application to? Well, Michelle, the answer is if it's ever present and you didn't get it done, it's probably because it's not important enough to you. And if it is important, and by the way, you asked the question directly to me. I see your question, other people don't. I'm not sure if that was your intention. Please do adjust your chat settings. But either way, the question is, if you remove the ever-present items, how do you resolve the fear that you will forget the task? So again, if you really want to do it, put it on your calendar because you're not doing it otherwise. It wouldn't be ever present. You would have checked it off by now. You didn't check it off, which means you didn't do it, which means it probably isn't that important, or you didn't see the value, or there's something else getting in your way. So get it on your calendar, create accountability, set some goals, hire a coach, whatever you need to do, to get it done, or take it off the list because it really doesn't belong there. Let me know if I answered your question effectively, and let me know anybody else if you have any questions. In the meantime, I'm going to transition the slide, and of course, could bring it back later if we need to. Okay, so here is the, yes, Michelle, you are right. It is hard to do, but better to do something than to sit around and pretend and kind of trick yourself or fool yourself into thinking you're going to do it and never actually do it. I had some goals at the beginning of Corona when I knew I'd be home more that I haven't touched. And so they're off my list for now. Doesn't mean they won't get back onto my list, but I've prioritized other things. So I've chosen, for example, to be delivering these webinars and creating community and offering the masterminds and some of these other things. And my idea to write a book just isn't happening for now. I have written one book, which I think I've shared with you before. Anyone who's interested, I would certainly love to learn that you have picked this up because I think there's a lot of value. Becoming the New Boss. It's available on Amazon. Little pitch there. I hope you don't mind. And I will share the link with you. But in the meantime, I just want you to understand that not every goal is ultimately going to happen. And if that is the case, then be willing to admit it was a goal, it was an idea, I wanted to do it, but I've just decided to prioritize other things because it wasn't worth it for me at this particular time. Okay, for now, we'll leave it there. Step number two is to share it. All right. So the last time, would anyone like to tell me which of these five is the one that we focused on the first time? And you could do it by number. Going across the top is 1, 2, 3, starting from the left, and then delegate 4 and monitor number 5. Which is the one we did the last time? Survey says. Was it 1, schedule regular standing meetings? Number 2, plan for regular communication. 3, implement and utilize collaboration software. 4, delegate. And 5, monitor and review processes. Okay, so the correct answer, which I don't see here yet, is wow, clearly I wasn't very good at this, or I think some of my content anyway is blending because I've talked about some of these in different webinars. In this particular topic webinar, the previous one last Wednesday, we talked about number 1, scheduling regular standing meetings. We talked about the morning huddles. That's where I believe we talked about this. Okay, and I showed you the 2 examples of a morning huddle, what that looks like. But anyone who said delegation, that is true. We have talked about delegation. We're going to talk about it more today. A brief review and introducing new ideas for those of you not familiar. And we did not talk about 2 or 5 directly, but I'm sure I alluded to it in enough of a form which makes it sound familiar to you. Okay, let's go on. Here are the 13 steps of delegation. I'm not going to review them all in great detail. If there is a particular step you would like feedback about, please just put that number in the chat. But as you see over here, there are 4 basic steps to effective delegation. Number 1, just like with productivity, you need to plan and prepare. The more planned and prepared you are, the more you will get done and the better you will get done. Number 2 is to empower the right person. Number 3 is to monitor their progress. And number 4 is to recognize and reward them for their work. So please tell me, is there anything here that you would like for me to unpack in detail? And while you're considering the answer to that question, I will talk about number 1 for a moment, just to reemphasize the fact that delegation often requires the creation of a culture. Not every culture necessarily is adapted, so to speak, to delegation or promotes it or encourages it. If you as a leader want people to delegate, if you want delegation to be part of your environment, part of your culture, you need to create that. You need to give permission to people to ask for things. You need to tell them to tell you when something should be delegated, when it isn't. All of these things are important and really are your responsibility. That's the one, sorry, that people often tell me that they would not have expected on their own. And so that's why I emphasize that one in particular. I don't think I got a response to my question about going deeper here. Does that mean that everybody is fully comfortable with everything that it says? I don't mind going deeper. We have some time to do it, but I don't want to cover all of them. Okay, I have to figure out when these responses came in. I think Michelle and Olatunde, I'm not sure if I got that right. I hope I did. I think your answers came later. I'm going to assume then that those are the ones I should focus on for starters, picking the right people and being clear. So we talked about here's a great book, by the way, that I've referenced, I think, before, Leadership and the 1-Minute Manager. In that book, you get a sense of situational leadership, which is what Ken Blanchard and associates do talk about. And picking the right person to a large degree does depend on that person's experience and their composition, their mindset, their willingness to learn, all those kinds of things. It also depends on the nature of what's being asked. So in some cases, you need immediate support. You want somebody who is really capable of providing it. On the other hand, you may be able to, in some cases, take more time and you want to fill your leadership pipeline and train people and do these kinds of things. Then you might choose somebody different. So you have to think about what you need, what people can offer, how much training is required, how much time does it involve to get them up to speed, how much runway do you have? All of these things are important considerations when determining who the right person is. And for number 5, just be really clear. What exactly are you asking the person to do? Get into writing, make sure that the other person agrees that this is a reasonable expectation, Make sure that that you share this in writing so that there's no question later on about what's being asked of them. The more that you're clear on task and outcome with vivid detail to describe it, typically speaking, the better results you will get. Think of it, if you are a teacher, for example, as an instructional rubric. So if you give a rubric to a student for a project, typically speaking, you will get a better outcome than if you don't, because you're being very clear on what you want from them. Anything else here? Anything else where you'd like a little more feedback, insight on the process? Or any specific questions you'd like to ask? Okay, I will continue to monitor your responses, but since I don't see anything new coming through, I'm going to get the hint and pivot for now. Okay, step number 3 is do it. So remove distractors, something as simple as powering down your phone when you're working, turning off the internet. Right now I'm trying to be super focused. Generally speaking, I turn my phone to do not disturb. This particular presentation I did not, because I was rushing in from a coaching call, and so it just was buzzing now a moment ago. I just went straight in, do not disturb, so that it would not interfere with my ability to deliver this to you. And that, I think, is true in a variety of ways. Now, to Michelle, how to let go of control and look for quality performance. Sounds like 2 different questions over there. Let me table it for the moment, and I'll try to come back to it shortly. Okay, now here you might have noticed that I highlighted 2. Okay, number 1 is going all in on task, and there's a little bit of reiteration here because the planning and the doing sometimes do overlap. So you'll see that scheduled tasks and block time is something we've already started to discuss. We did talk about knocking out the 2-minute tasks. I believe this is where we introduced the Eisenhower matrix. For those of you not familiar, the Eisenhower matrix is a quadrant, and it's very similar to the urgent and important quadrant you might have seen through Stephen Covey or others, where everything we do falls typically into one of 4 quadrants. Either it's urgent and important, like there's a fire in the building you need to get out, or it's not urgent and not important, the other extreme, like responding to some kind of email, maybe, spam or something like that, or a social media post, or just something not particularly important to you. It's certainly not going to drive your bottom line. And then you have things in between. So quadrant 2, so the first one is do it. The second one, which is quadrant 2, which we're about to describe, is defer it, which means you don't necessarily have to do it now, but definitely should be done. These are things about strategic planning, vision, mission, leadership, all the kinds of things that will help you take the next step in your business, but don't necessarily have to happen today before noon. You might take some time, maybe a retreat, maybe some time with a coach or with a mastermind or a group of mentors, whatever, to unpack them further, or your executive administrative team, that kind of thing. So we started, I'm going to go sort of backwards. I'm not sure the way you're seeing it. Okay, I'm doing it from my side. Actually, let me do it the other way. So the top left corner would be do it. That would be urgent and important. Do it right now. You have an angry client or an angry customer or an angry parent that needs a response right now because the issue is urgent. Maybe it's a safety issue or something like that. You do it right away. The second one is defer. That's urgent. Not urgent, but still important. That's why it's on the top here, because it's important. As we go down here, we now get to not urgent, but one second. It's not important, but urgent. So in other words, it's something that needs to get done, but it's not really that important that you be the one to do it, or someone with your capacity does it. That's the delegation quadrant. So that kind of hits on what we talked about before. I might delegate it to somebody else because some things are delegatable, if that word even exists, and some things are not. There's some things you specifically need to be doing, and you need to know what those are. I actually unpack that in great detail in my masterclass, my Delegate to Accelerate. And then the last quadrant, which is the one I mentioned before, is the not urgent and not important, and that one is delete it. So it's do, defer, delegate, delete. The 4 Ds. And if you master those 4 Ds, you have a pretty good sense right away of what work you should be doing and when. So we talked about removing distractors, Not let your phone own you, not let your internet or your social media own you, or other distractors. Maybe you're sitting in a place where there's a lot of distraction. In today's environment, that's particularly challenging because we might be working from home and not have privacy, or have kids that need our attention, or other factors to consider. We do the best we can. The fourth D, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name. I apologize. It might be Iveles. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher it, so I do apologize up front. Either way, the fourth D is delete it. Okay, I'm hoping that that's the one you're referring to, the 1, 2, 3, 4. That last one, the bottom, the not urgent, not important, that's deleted. Okay, so remove distractors, schedule your tasks in block time. We talked about that already. Go all in on tasks. Do not, okay, thank you. Is it Evelise? All right. Okay. 2 thumbs up for me. And I've only had 2 cups of coffee today. So I'm taking a lot of pride in myself for that. Thank you. Do, defer, delegate, delete. Thank you, Danielle. I appreciate you putting it there. Okay. Go all in on task. Do not multitask. I cannot say that, with enough emphasis or enthusiasm. Do not multitask, because even though people think that you're more productive when you multitask, it almost never works out. Even if you're doing something as simple as managing 2 things on a stovetop, a soup and I don't know, something else, it can be hard to keep calculation, but that is manageable. But when it comes to real tasks that require real focus and real responsibility and real attention, multitasking, it's not just, I don't really need 100% of my attention, so I can give 50% over here and 50% over here, knock off 2 birds with 1 stone. Maybe in some rare cases, really non-important things could fit into that description. But in most cases, you're more prone to mistakes. You're less likely to concentrate effectively. You're operating at less capacity because your brain needs to work harder to keep everything top of mind. It just doesn't work. So I encourage you to get rid of it. The next one, knock out the 2-minute tasks. That's part of the do it as well that we talked about before. Brian Tracy talks about this when he talks about eat your frog, right? Get that thing out of the way first thing in the morning. If there's a list of a couple of things that you need to do, and by doing it, you'll get it out of the way and it'll allow you to focus on the really important things, just go ahead, the 2-minute things, knock them off your list and attend to it so you can move on. And then the last one, we talked about this in a different context last week with self-care, but the main thing is maintain high energy levels. Okay, sustain it. So as I mentioned before, in the last session, we talked about the 4th one, which is prioritize self-care, otherwise known as sharpening your saw, keeping yourself fresh physically and otherwise to do the best work. Let's talk a little bit about the first 2 over here. They're pretty quick, which is why I chose to do 2 of them, similar to the previous slide. The first one is anything not essential, learn to say no. Now, I have a feeling that many of you are just really nice people. And being a really nice person would oftentimes make it hard for you to say no. I don't consider myself such a nice person. So for me, it's a little bit easier. But for people who really want to please and really want to help, and I shouldn't say it like that because I do also want to please and help, but I have other considerations and I'm willing to say that. But some people just don't feel comfortable with it. Maybe they feel it's going to compromise relationships. Maybe they'll feel like people won't come back to them the next time. It's a hard thing, but I do see really high performers in particular have a willingness to say no. And I hate when they do it to me. Right. So for example, you might be aware that I have a podcast. And if you're not, first of all, I just released a great podcast today with Alden Mills. He's a former Navy SEAL commander, and he's been a consultant for a long time. I forget who's here from, I think it's Therese, may be wrong on that, from San Francisco. Alden lives in San Francisco, and he's a really powerful leadership expert. I would definitely encourage you to get into that page. In fact, let me see if I can link it up real quick so that you can click on it and maybe even subscribe to the podcast, because I think you'll love it. Let's see, I'm going to put in the other link and then just clean it up once it's in the chat here. So instead of toolkit, it'll be podcast. How easy is that? Let's get rid of the extra part here and share it with you. Okay, so this one is episode 59. Anyway, the point is that he said yes. He was really great about it, and I appreciate everybody who says yes. It doesn't mean that he's not a busy person, but there are people. One person who's a TED Talk, I wouldn't say expert, but somebody who did a really nice job and has and many views in respective to her TED Talk. She's a New York Times bestselling author, etc. I'm connected with her on LinkedIn. I reached out to her. I really wanted to be able to do this, and she said no, or at least her virtual assistant said no, because she has other commitments and other things she's working on. And I totally respect that. A lot of people reach out to me to be on their podcast or other things, and I can't say yes to everybody. So you need to be able to say no to people who are asking you things if it's not critical to what you need to be doing to be most successful. Again, I want to be very clear. I'm not telling you not to volunteer. I'm not telling you not to be willing to lend a hand. Of course, we want to help people where we can, but we have to be able to find the right balance. And if we are spreading ourselves thin and helping everybody who asks and responding yes to every request, we'll have nothing left in the tank for ourselves. So I hope that you are with me on this and you could see the value in saying no, really so that you can say yes to the most important things. That's what this is about. It's recognizing you have a limit in what you can do. So go ahead and put your effort in the right place. There is a name for this, and it's slipping my mind for the moment. It's called the, maybe somebody here on the call knows what it is. There's a name for it where I say, it's called the opportunity something. It's not the opportunity factor. Maybe you could even Google it while we're on this call. It's called the opportunity something, where basically what it means is that every opportunity that I pursue knocks me out of another opportunity that I can no longer pursue. So for example, if I'm going to be investing in creating webinars for everybody and doing other things that will add value, I'm knocking out a different opportunity at the moment, which is to write a book, or maybe to pursue a business opportunity, or maybe to do something. Opportunity cost. Does that sound right to you? Can anyone just confirm on that opportunity cost? I'm pretty sure that's what it is. There's a cost for pursuing opportunity, even if it looks like an opportunity for you. If I go on your podcast, I can't go on somebody else's podcast at the same time. It's all the same concept. Okay. Any questions or comments there? I know I spent a lot of time on it, but I really wanted to emphasize it because I think it is important. Does anyone, you could say agree, disagree, question. Thank you, Michelle, for the confirmation on the name. Opportunity cost. Therese, appreciate the affirmation there. Excellent. Okay, great. Good. Keep the comments coming. Even if you say no, I'm looking for it as I pivot to the next one, which is focus on excellence and not perfection. Does anyone want to take a stab at that? I know I talked about it before somewhere along the way, maybe even the previous webinar. Why is it that we should be focusing on excellence as opposed to perfection, especially those of us who tend to be perfectionists? Okay, well, I'm hopeful that answers are forthcoming. Sorry about the audio. Hopefully that's only an issue that one person is experiencing. If anyone else has audio issues as well, please do let me know. But in the meantime, the idea here is that perfection will ultimately slow you down. You're going to wind up looking for every little issue that needs to be. Thank you, Therese. Okay, it's only an illusion. That's also true. Very important. Okay, focus should be on the willingness to participate. And I would add to it, you do want to do a good job, Marilyn, without question, but you don't want to let it paralyze you. And that's the fine line. That's the balance here that we have to find. I want excellence because excellence is what's going to encourage me to encourage people to choose me for whatever it is that I do. If I'm a teacher, I want people to think that I'm an excellent teacher. If I'm a coach, which I am, I want you all to think that I'm excellent. If I'm presenting content, I want you to think that I'm excellent, but I'm not going to stress over it to the point where it has to be perfect. Because when it's perfect, number one, I'll never stop worrying about it. Number two, I will feel confined by my desire for perfection, right? I'm going to constantly be trapped by it, and I won't be able to just kind of live and be in the moment and just feel natural. What we want, if you attend a seminar, even if you're attending this, you are attending it obviously, but even when you attend this, I should say, you're not looking for me to be perfect, I would hope. You're looking for me to be excellent so that I deliver you quality content, provide an engaging platform and conversation, give you something actionable to take away, and still making mistakes and still being human and still demonstrating, that side of me. I think that that's a reasonable expectation. Certainly the operative assumption that I have when I do these. And I would imagine you'd feel the same way. Okay. So perfection is false, takes away from your goals. I think it seems like we're on the same page here, and I appreciate that. Okay. The other pieces, real quick: break often, but briefly. We talked about self-care the last time. Good to see you, Kelly. Thank you for that. And then use your commute wisely. Now, those of you who are not commuting, which would be people like me, now is a great time for you to add something to your calendar that will give you fuel for your future. So reading more books would be a great example. Listening to audiobooks, podcasts, anything that's going to give you, attending webinars like this one, maybe you couldn't attend under normal circumstances. So leveraging your commuting time, your other time, your free time for growth in different ways. Yes, you have to be able to unplug completely, but you also want to be able to utilize time that you have for continued growth. Okay, and here's the last one. We'll talk about this more in a subsequent slide, but the 5 that you see over here for leading: number 1, you want to build workplace passion. You want your people to be passionate about what you do, right? About what they do. Part of it is aligning them wherever possible with their abilities to and what they're interested in with the work that you're asking them to do. And that is certainly something we could be focusing on more. We'll come back to managing stress shortly. I will share with you an ebook that I would love for you to download if you haven't already, about managing workplace stress. I think it'll be a good resource for you, and it's free. The next one is understand and leverage your leadership style. We talked about that the last time, right? We talked about blue and green in particular, but there are other leadership styles. Knowing how you lead, your style about it, as well as how others prefer to be led and how they react, all these things matter. And the more you understand how people are wired, the better you could lead them. And how you're wired, by the way. Setting them up for success. So it means that you want to position people to do their very best work. That might be anything as simple as the environment, the lighting, the temperature in the room, the layout of the space. All of these things should be open for conversation, shouldn't necessarily be a given. And then the last one is leading from the values up, which means to say that you should know what your core values are, because when you have them, you can communicate around them, you can motivate people around them. And of course, if you see that people are out of alignment, you have an objective benchmark around which to pivot. So if communication and openness are values, and somebody is not being open, or they're not communicating properly, or something like this, or being ambiguous, or they're being indirect, or they're talking to others about you, you can then approach them and say, hey, this is a value. We all agreed to it, or at least we all accepted it. Now we have to step up to it and make sure that we're consistent with it. I hope that that makes sense. From a teacher standpoint, I even use this with my school as a head of school in developing a behavioral program based on the PBIS model that worked for our school population. So for example, when we valued respect as a core value in this program, the question becomes, well, what does respect look like in every part of the building, the classroom, the school bus, the shared spaces, whatever? And what does it look like in one-to-one interaction? It's a lot easier to tell a child, we have a value called respect. What you're doing right now is not a demonstration of respect, and here is why. Then if you don't have a value and you say, that's disrespectful, right? Or you just say, that's not a good behavior. We don't want to see any more of that in our building. It's not the same kind of conversation. It makes it about me judging you as opposed to you living up to the standard that we have collectively embraced. I hope that that was clearly stated and that you understand as a result of that. And by the way, there are values lists in my book that I referenced before. I have a chapter on the topic. I also have blog posts about it. It's the idea that once you have your values, how do you determine them? And then how do you solidify them? And how do you act upon them in a consistent way where they really do drive the bus? Okay, a couple of slides here that I'd like to share with you about stress. Thank you very much for the feedback there. I do appreciate it. Okay, stress reducing strategies. We've got proactive and we have reactive. Proactive strategies are things we do in advance that are going to help us just be better at what we do and feel less stressed. And the reason I chose to focus on this one, even though I did a whole other talk on stress management, is because I assume that not everybody attended. And even if you were able to attend that one, this is such a big issue for us today in particular. It was always an issue, frankly, because we hear about stress in the workplace all the time. I don't think anybody on this call probably could say that they don't feel unduly stressed at times. But now in particular, with all of the uncertainty and the disruption, I believe this to be even more relevant and useful. So it's healthy routines, it's keeping things together, being well organized, knowing where everything is, keeping a healthy calendar that you can work with, etc. Some of this will feel redundant because we talked about it elsewhere, taking breaks, having clear values, prioritizing and doing the right work, establishing boundaries. We said before about being willing to say no to certain people, or at least at certain times, and resisting perfectionism. In fact, this entire left column, I think, is in many ways a summarized, succinct review of what we talked about until now, okay? On the right side, we have some new ones. So for example, if you are feeling stressed, label the emotion. I am feeling overwhelmed. I am feeling tired. I am feeling mistrusted or or not valued. I label it. This is what I feel. So I give it a name. Now that may in and of itself not do very much, but it gets you thinking differently. It pulls it from without. It kind of like puts it on the wall and says, I can point to it, I can label it, and now I can begin to approach it. As opposed to if it's inside of me and I'm not really giving it a name, it just gets mixed in. And the result is I don't feel good, or I don't feel healthy. I don't feel released, so to speak. And it just sort of weighs on me, and I don't know what to do with it. But if I label it, I already have a name and an approach to how to deal. Keep track of your stressors, right? What are the things people are asking you to do, or the things you're asking of yourself to do that are stressing you out? And then try to not have that happen, or certainly not in the same way or to the same degree. Tidy up your workspace. Being in a messy place makes people stressed. Let others know that you're stressed, whether they're the cause of it or not. Just kind of putting it out there, not to be a complainer, but just to articulate it. That alone, it's like talk therapy, right? Just saying it will make me feel better. Find the silver lining. So think about Corona, for example. We've been disrupted in serious ways, and some people are struggling financially, and their health, other things. And that's real. I'm not trying to dismiss it for a second, but what are the silver linings here? We talked about the opportunity on the other side of uncertainty, right? What am I getting out of this in terms of more family time, reduced commuting, healthier eating or healthier living? What is happening for me now that's better or minimally as good as what existed before? The very fact that I am healthy, which I'm hoping everybody here is and should continue to be, the very fact that I'm still receiving my salary or making a livelihood during these difficult times, that's a silver lining in and of itself, even though the future is somewhat uncertain. Making a joke of it, right? Sometimes just laughing about it. If you're good at that, which I'm not, but if you're good at making a joke about yourself, it could be a huge stress releaser. My kids are great at it, about me at least. So I try to go along with it. At least I get the benefit that way. And then think positively, right? Not only ask yourself, what's the worst that can happen if, but think positively about your future, your situation, what you're getting out of this. See this as a challenge. Think about it from the Carol Dweck growth mindset perspective. I love a challenge. That alone could push you forward. Okay. And as a leader, here are some other ideas how you can reduce stress for yourself. So whether you consider yourself a leader or not, I'm going to ask you to please type in the one strategy that you think you could be using from all of these that would motivate you and keep you going even when the chips are down and things feel difficult. Take a minute to read them and then just type in your response, please. What is the one strategy that if you utilize this more often would make you more comfortable and less stressed? Seek to control only the controllable, learn to delegate, increase my determination, learn to delegate. Thank you for all of these. Looking for more, so keep them coming, everybody. Marilyn, please reply to all panelists and attendees, and everybody else, please make sure that you are set in the same way. Okay, learn to delegate. So a lot of delegation here, reviewing your goals. This may be the slide where you not notate and say, this is my takeaway from this presentation. I'm sure there's others as well. I hope by now you are thinking in those terms very intently, because I'm going to be asking you very soon. So please do have that answer in mind. Delegate, connect at your pace, let others support you. Okay, so please write these down. All right, make sure that you are going to actually do something with this, not just respond to my question. So I hope that that is something for you, some real food for thought on this. Remember, not everything is within your locus of control. And if you can't control it, there's no point in stressing over it. One of my favorite scenes, it's from the book from the movie, it might be a book too, from the movie Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks, which involves a lawyer during the Cold War, an exchange of spies between the United States and I believe it was Russia. It took place largely in East Germany. Anyway, so the spy that the Americans caught multiple times, I don't know if you saw the movie, if you caught the scene, but every time that Tom Hanks says something like, you don't seem very concerned, when the stakes were very high, he says, would it help? And he does it with a straight face. And I think that that was, to me, one of the most revealing moments of any film I've ever seen, because it keeps reminding me of the fact that stressing over something doesn't mean that you're changing it. And it doesn't make it better for you. In many cases, it has the exact opposite effect. Okay, now how can we go deeper over here? Let's quickly get these links to you so that you can do what you need to do with them. First of all, I'm going to re-include, and again, I really, if I could beg, I would, because I value your feedback that much. I'm going to include over here the forms. Please choose the one that is relevant to you. Please take 5 minutes if you haven't already and given the feedback. And if you did already, please say, I did, because I'd love to be able to thank you in this forum as well for your contribution to my information. Let me include here as well. I got so much to share. It's kind of crazy, actually. Let me share here the productivity resources. These are free and something that you could access. One of them is the blueprint. So that describes everything we've been talking about until now. And one of them is a productivity assessment, which won't take you more than 5 minutes to do and will give you immediate feedback about your productivity and opportunities for you to grow. Those are all on my website and they're all available to you for free. If you are interested in talking further, first of all, please, about the Mastermind, because again, I think this is a great time to be really learning and growing with peers and all the things that I talked about in a way that's going to move the needle for you, give you insights and also validation in a lot of the work that you do. I would encourage you to fill out the forum, and if that's too difficult or you've already done that and you just want to talk further, reach out to me in the email address that I shared with you so that we can see if it's a good fit for you, because I'm not taking everybody. I only want people on there who are going to really step up, see the value, do the work, and be willing to grow. If that's not you, that's totally fine. I understand, and I certainly don't want you to feel an obligation to have the conversation in that context. But if it is you, if you are the person who wants to get more done, plan better, reduce stress, strengthen your leadership, personal and collective, improve your communication, bond with like-minded peers, learn new skills, hold others accountable and yourself, then I would strongly encourage you to reach out, because this could be an offering that will really transform your life. And as someone who attended masterminds on my own, I can share with you that I'm not just talking bluff. It really was a transformative experience. So I mentioned to you the upcoming webinars are available to register for. We already have, I think, at least 70 or so folks registered for tomorrow. Let me share with you a link here of where you can find the information. Tomorrow is about memory and retention. Next week is one on communication and feedback with a special co-presenter, somebody who I consider to be a good friend and, more importantly, a very valuable, knowledgeable resource. So I would encourage you to join me for that. And I think that is it. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to share with you. If you want to contribute to the work that I'm doing, I'm going to include a couple of links here where you could reach out to me. You could make a small donation. You could grab a copy of Becoming the New Boss book. These are all resources I would encourage you to take a look at. And then I think I promised you the both the YouTube channel and the stress management ebook. So let me drop those in here as well. I feel like I'm just a link dropping machine at this point. Forgive me for that. I don't want to overwhelm you with all these links, but I do want you to have everything. So here is a link both to the stress management ebook and to my YouTube channel. If you don't already subscribe to my YouTube channel, please go ahead and do so. All of these get uploaded there and you could refer back to them on demand at any time. Thank you, Nancy. I really do appreciate your sharing. Can everybody please do that as well like Nancy did? Tell me, what was your big takeaway from today, something that you're prepared to commit to moving forward? And of course, anything you want help with, you hopefully by now know how to reach me. I want to serve on multiple levels if I can, and I definitely value you being here. So again, please do end our call with some feedback about what it is that you learned. Nancy talked about connecting at her pace, as well as controlling only the controllable and managing her day so that she doesn't try to do too much, because when you do that, it stresses you out, frankly, and you wind up doing less than before. Aldrina, thank you very much for sharing. Anything in particular that you took away that you would like to emphasize? And Terry, if you can go ahead and type that into the chat, that would be great as well. Excellence is not perfection. Thank you for sharing that. A lot to think about. And you will be getting a recording of this so you could refer back to it and review it as many times as comfortable and valuable for you. Just looking to see if anybody else wants to share before we formally wrap this up, because once I end the meeting, I won't be able to see your responses. So I'm going to end the recording at this point, and I'll continue on for just another couple of minutes to see any other responses here.